Funding for Shaperillis is provided by
Squarespace, the sponsor of today's video. Court is back in session. I'm really glad you guys liked my ranking of every first Ace Attorney case in the series. At least I assume you did. I'm recording the script to this next one before I even finished editing the first one. Oops. Ah well. Ace Attorney stops for no man. And truth be told, I was just too excited to get to this next one. Every second case in the series ranked. Now at first glance, this might not seem as easily comparable as a ranking of every starter tutorial case, or even every third case, since there's been a lot of discussion about the quality of those. But I think there actually is a lot to be gained from directly comparing and contrasting each second case the series has to offer. The second case is the game's chance to really spread its wings and give you a far more involved mystery to investigate. Emphasis on investigate, since most first cases are courtroom-only affairs, meaning the burden is usually on the second case to introduce the other half of Ace Attorney gameplay. This is also the game's chance to introduce major players, such as the detective you'll be encountering in almost every case, and the prosecutor you'll be butting heads with for the remainder of the game. Second cases have a pretty big role to play in terms of setting the stage for what the game as a whole has in store, arguably even more so than the first cases. There are some that succeed incredibly well at just about everything they set out to do, and others that, let's just say I could absolutely go the rest of my life without ever playing them again. So let's see which second cases are at the top of their class, and which ones clearly never should have passed the bar. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention spoilers for all these cases. I'm gonna be doing full spoilers this time. If you haven't played them, it's gonna get spoiled, so yeah, watch out.
Disappointment in the game of life!
I don't even know where to start. The Adventure of the Unbreakable Speckled Band is one of the most unfathomably boring and terrible cases I've ever played in Ace Attorney. I don't even know if that's a hot take or if there's a general consensus on this one. I've seen other people who hate it, but then others still who think it's a fantastic emotional powerhouse of a case. And like, no, your best friend died and you have been accused of his murder. And yet there isn't a sense of weight to it at all because of how goofy and insignificant it all feels. I don't feel any of the same emotional weight I felt at, say, the death of Mia in case 2 of the first game. There, it really felt like your life got a little emptier and you really cared about proving sweet little Maya's innocence. Here, I mean, we already got accused of murder in the first case. Now we gotta prove ourselves innocent again? I feel a little bad for Susato and her musings about Kazuma leaving this world, but then it just gets really goofy with her constantly performing the Susato takedown on you. And that's not even getting into Herlock Sholmes, who, okay, yes, he is the best part of the case, obviously, but I feel like his antics really distract from what should be a very urgent and personal case. God, why am I even calling this a case? That's the thing. The main issue that makes this by far one of the worst cases in the whole series. You don't go to court. Ever. This entire case is just investigation with no trial. And it doesn't even do what the Edgeworth games do, where you still hear testimonies from people and present evidence against them. There is none of that in this one. You point and click at stuff. And then you point and click some more. And then you talk to people. And Ryunosuke will lift up his hands to show off his handcuffs 20 times throughout it all. That is the vast majority of the gameplay loop in this godforsaken case. Well, since it's only investigation segments, they probably make up for that by having you go to all sorts of cool locations, right? Nope! You get to investigate Kazuma's room, the room next door, and the hallway between the 2 rooms. That is the entirety of what this case has to offer in terms of the point and clicking. As you can imagine, it gets really, really, really old. How's the story itself? Oh, I don't know, pretty shit. Turns out it was all just an accident, cause this Russian ballerina was worried Kazuma was gonna rat her out, so she pushed him and he accidentally broke his neck and died. And now he never comes back ever. That's great! What a nothing culprit with a nothing motivation. I just played this case and I can't remember a single thing about her or her stupid burly seaman friend who covers up for her. Even if he contributes to the tonal issues, Herlock Sholmes is by far the only redeeming thing about this case. It's great seeing how much of a dick he acts to you. I love seeing him hanging off of various objects. The part where he starts singing My Way is so good. And by far his greatest contribution to this case is its only fun gameplay segment, that being the Dance of Deduction. This is a really novel gimmick. having him present wildly off-base theories about what's going on, only for you to correct them and have him swoop in and act like he knew what he was talking about the whole time. It's fun, and I especially love scanning the environment or a character model to find the solution you're looking for. But like, the gimmick would have been great in a real case that didn't solely rely on it. This would be like if they introduced Athena's mood matrix segment, and then they just had that be the only thing in the entire case that isn't just pointing and clicking and talking to people. It's like, no, you need a trial to go with this. You need testimonies to contradict and present the right evidence to. Otherwise, this just becomes a boring, tedious, bafflingly low-stakes feeling slog where the dance of deduction is the only thing you have to look forward to from a gameplay perspective. If this was just a really good, interesting, or emotional story, then maybe I would rank it a little bit higher. But I think it's just pretty standard and flat from a story perspective, and abysmal from a gameplay perspective. This case left an insanely bad taste in my mouth the first time I played this game. And while case 3 absolutely picks up the slack and finally starts to hook me in, I can't say I'm a fan of the first 2 cases in this game. Especially this one. I hope the next second case we have to rank isn't equally as boring. It is equally as boring. Maybe more boring, honestly, but hey, at least it has trials. You can't say that about this one.
I'm the Joker, baby.
The Monstrous Turnabout is a case about a village that fears a yokai monster, and they have a pro wrestling show, but there's a merger that's threatening to... Huh? Sorry, what happened? I must have dozed off. Oh, right. The Monstrous Turnabout. This might genuinely be the dullest case in the entirety of Ace Attorney. Legitimately, the only times I was ever interested in what was going on is when my Blurbos Simon Blackwell and Bobby Fulbright were on screen. It's a deeply cruel twist of fate that this is the case that gets to introduce Simon Blackwell, whereas the otherwise highly popular and beloved Magical Turnabout gets stuck with introducing Neuda. If these cases could just switch prosecutors, that would be so ideal. Then again, this case should count itself lucky it gets to introduce such great characters, and does it pretty damn effectively. Because without Simon and Bobby, this case is F tier. I'm genuinely so serious, I can't stand it. The thing is, not a single one-off character this case introduces is among the worst characters in Ace Attorney history. Everyone here ranges from fine to kinda bad, but sure, I guess I can tolerate them. The problem is that they're stuck in one of the most uninteresting stories ever told in the Ace Attorney series. It really shouldn't be that boring. I mean, there's pro wrestling, a mysterious yokai legend, apparent demonic possession. How does none of this coalesce into a case that grabs me in the slightest? I wish I knew, man. It's genuinely really hard to articulate why this case is so bad in a way that isn't true for a lot of other cases I hate. I can tell you why Turnabout Big Top is bad, we'll get to that. But I think a big part of why this case is so low for me is because, at least with your Big Tops or other similarly abysmal cases, I feel something, even if it's a profound sense of anger or despair. The Monstrous Turnabout makes me feel absolutely nothing. I feel like no one in this case has any motivation for you to latch onto. Your client is Damien Tenma, an obtuse mayor who frequently pretends to be demonically possessed in a gimmick that never charmed me once. I'm sorry. Maybe Apollo can find the motivation to fight for his client so that his daughter Jinxie won't be left all alone. After all, Apollo and Jinxie are such good friends. Oh wait, no. Trucy is really good friends with Jinxie, and Trucy is unceremoniously yeeted from relevance in this case, and the entirety of Dual Destinies. Just make Jinxie good friends with Apollo or Athena if you're not gonna use Trucy. Oh my god, is it that hard? Even without a pre-established connection with Jinxie, you would hope you get endeared enough to her over the course of this case to want to help her. But I never did. She just keeps cowering out of fear of yokai, and she slaps a charm on Apollo in an animation that probably would have gone really hard on the 3DS, sure, but just gets really old in any other context. I never cared about Jinxie because it's hard to pick out any semblance of personality other than extreme cowardice. It's like having to defend Yonobo in court. Like, would I really give a shit about doing that? No. Phineas Filch is fine. I like his little sliding animation, and it's kind of cute how he keeps stealing shit from everyone. Nothing to write home about, but a slightly bright spot in this case, I suppose. But then there's the culprit. Oh, brother. As nebulous as a lot of this case's problems can be to describe, I think one of the most obvious problems with it is the fact that they reveal who the killer is in the opening cutscene. I don't know why they did that. It makes sense in the first cases because you're only going to be there for like 2 hours tops usually. The first cases aren't about big mysteries for you to solve alongside the characters. They just teach you the mechanics of the game and get the overarching story in motion. The monstrous turnabout is anywhere from 5 to 6 hours, and a ton of that time feels like a complete waste because, yeah, we know who did it! You showed us! Why did you show us it was him? Why do I need to waste my time dicking around pursuing other possibilities? Maybe they figured Florent Labelle was just way too obvious of a killer. Considering the first time you encounter him, he's literally instructing Filch on what to say in court the next day. How did Apollo not immediately suspect him of being the killer? Aside from that, he's just... I mean, look at him, man. He's a joke. Apparently, overemphasizing random words is a good gimmick for an Ace Attorney culprit now. The entire time I was dealing with him, one thought went through my mind. I think I miss Red White. And not to spoil too much, but I have a lot of problems with Red White. So it's awesome to get a killer who's just great value Red White. Maybe that's why they're the only 2 second killers in the series who get revealed immediately. Other than that, this case is just needlessly confusing for its own good, but not in an exciting or cool way like Rise from the Ashes, for instance. So much of the time is debating which characters are secretly the pro wrestler Amazing Ninetales, which characters are secretly the demon Tenma Taro, if the demon Tenma Taro actually is real, which of course it's not. Stop wasting my time. I actually would have given this case so much props if it just casually revealed, yeah, no, demons are real actually. I don't know, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for Ace Attorney. But of course, they aren't. So this case is just frustratingly dull and drawn out for no real reason. For such a fantastical setting with unique concepts, the fact that the conflict in this case stems from a municipal merger genuinely bores me out of my skull. This case literally only gets mildly interesting at the very end, with a neat reveal about what Tenma Taro actually is. And a pretty clever way you catch Florent Labelle. I like how they hide clues in plain sight, like his changing hair color, which you assume to just be a quirky gimmick, until it primes you to realize that the white hair in the mask is actually his since the color washed out. That's pretty cool. Other than that bit at the very end of the case, I got nothing. This one just sucks. Yes! The only time I ever felt any joy during the interrogation was from talking to Bobby Fulbright. I initially thought he was just a trying too hard copy of Gumshoe, but I really came to love him over the course of the game. He really sneaks up on you in that regard. So on this replay, yeah, I really loved him here. And the only time I ever felt any joy during the trial was from Simon Blackwell. I love this man a normal amount. He is genuinely so cool. This case legitimately does a great job of establishing him and how easily he can manipulate people. So I guess it does deserve props for really nailing these 2 character introductions. Otherwise, this is such a slog. The entire time I played it, I kept asking myself, do I even like Dual Destinies? The answer is yes. I think it's got a lot of really cool elements and mysteries. Plus Athena and Simon are real all-timer characters for me. But oh my god, is this a nightmare to get through. Just replace this with the Orca case, and you've basically solved like half of Dual Destinies' problems. I know that seems like a rude and dismissive thing to do to the monstrous turnabout, but you gotta remember, the ends justify the means.
I guess you're gonna miss the panty raid.
I cannot begin to tell you how bad of an impression Turnabout Corner left on me the first time I played it. I immediately pegged it as one of my all-time most hated cases in the series. And while I've kind of come around on some elements of it, which are legitimately solid, I still think it's a pretty bad case. Everyone always hypes it up by talking about what a cool idea it is for you to solve various non-murder mysteries, and then see how they tie into the actual murder you find out about a little later on. Yeah, that is a cool idea, on paper. In practice, however, it just means the first half of this case is largely extremely boring. We gotta find who hit Phoenix with a car, even though he was barely injured from it, so it's not really that big a deal. We gotta find this guy's noodle stand. Oh no, not the noodles. Won't somebody think of the noodles? We have to find Trucy's panties, which... oh, we will get to that. There's just so much mundane stuff you have to do on the first investigation day that you don't even get to meet your client, Waki Kataki, until the very end of the day for like 10 seconds. It makes it really hard to get emotionally invested in the struggle to prove him innocent. Well, that, and the fact that he's genuinely one of the most obnoxious characters in the entire series. He's a douchey wannabe cool child who talks in charmless, outdated slang, and I never once cared about him. His medical situation is really fucked up and scary. And all I could think was, man, I can't believe they wasted such a good premise on a character I don't give a shit about. Genuinely, I would put Waki in the bottom 10 worst Ace Attorney characters of all time. And the sad thing is, he's not even the worst character introduced in this case. No more beating around the bush. Let's talk about Wesley Stickler. Maybe the worst Ace Attorney character ever? He starts out as a boring stick-in-the-mud student who copies that windy old bag thing of talking really fast that stopped being funny 3 games ago. And if this is all he was, then okay, fine. But no, he's the panty snatcher. You see, Trucy does a magic trick involving a pair of panties prop. And Wesley is so enamored by this magic trick that he steals the panties of this 15-year-old girl to unlock their secrets. You also can't even say, oh, he's not into that in a weird way, he just wants to understand the magic trick. Because he also steals this other lady's panties. Those panties aren't magic. What's the excuse there? This guy is just an unfathomable creep who makes Trucy visibly uncomfortable when we meet up with him later in prison, where he belongs. Nothing about his shtick is funny. And it's made even worse by the fact that we waste an entire damn day of court on him and his panty obsession. Holy shit, is this an absolutely painful experience. I never want to see his face again for as long as I live. Once you get past these atrocious elements, which, trust me, is a very difficult ask, you also have to deal with a ton of elements that feel reheated from other better cases. We have a defendant who insists that he's guilty, which makes our job insurmountably difficult. You know, just like in Rise from the Ashes with Lana. We have a sweet, innocent-looking girl as the culprit, who turns out to be manipulating the man she's dating in order to serve her own nefarious purposes. Wow, good job, Apollo Justice. I've always wondered what dollar store brand Dahlia looked like. God, this case is so unbearably boring when it isn't filling me with pure rage. But to its credit, there are some good elements at play here. Even though Alita Tiala is a pretty boring culprit, I have to admit, that last day in court with her is pretty solid. I especially found the way she pulled off the murder, being inside the noodle cart and all, to be really creative. It is neat seeing all the elements of those initial mysteries from the first day finally pay off in the ending. And while every other one-off character in this case is either pretty forgettable or one of the most abominable creations in the history of gaming, there is one I actually really like, and that's Guy Eldoon. His design is fun, his backstory is interesting, I like the gimmick with the harmonica he occasionally plays. He's just a cool side character and the only home run this case hit after missing with all the other ones. Okay, but let's also be fair and give this case credit for introducing its main characters very well. Trucy and Clavier both make great splashes here. I love Trucy's adorable enthusiasm, and Clavier is great and a very different kind of prosecutor. One who teases Apollo, but ultimately feels a lot more emotionally mature than any of the prosecutors from the original trilogy. Like, he already only cares about the truth and isn't here solely to antagonize you. That's pretty different and cool. Oh, and I absolutely adore the Apollo Justice Trilogy version of Emma. I never really cared for her in Rise from the Ashes, because she kind of just felt like a science version of Maya. Here, it's such a cool progression to her character to see how jaded she became after not getting her dream job. She's way more interesting here than she was in Rise from the Ashes, in my opinion. The mini games you do with her were fun. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. This case definitely has its moments, and it's not the worst thing in the world. But man, does it feel like it when you're talking to Waki or Wesley. An absolute misfire that brings the momentum of Turnabout Trump to a screeching halt.
That's right.
I am Kira.
So you know how Turnabout Corner was boring and had infuriating characters in its first half, and then it gave way to a pretty good trial segment at the very end? The Fire Witch is a better version of that, because it's only boring with average characters in the first half, and then it gets a really good trial segment at the end. I really can't stress enough what a drag that first half is, though. Since Leighton v. Wright is laid out like a Leighton game, with Ace Attorney trials sprinkled in here and there, its cases are exclusively trial segments with no investigations to be found. This not only makes most of the cases pretty easy since you don't have a lot of evidence to sort through, but it can also make them really damn repetitive and dull. Case in point, you start this case out by interviewing 4 witnesses at once, which is a neat new feature at first. But then you realize that these 4 witnesses are gonna be at the stand for the entirety of the trial. The only new witness comes in halfway through and joins the rest of them. So you're basically stuck with these fine enough, but rather one-note characters the entire time. This would be fine if there was new stuff to say about the case, but they just stretch out the discussion of the incredibly limited amount of details there are at the crime scene. Oh, Espella cast the spell and set these guys on fire. But wait, she couldn't have done it because she needed a scepter. But what if she was holding the scepter and then dropped it? Well, she couldn't have done that because she was holding something else in her hand. Okay, but what if she was holding the scepter in her other hand? Oh, well that can't be the case because she was holding a bucket of milk in her other hand. Okay, but what if she dropped the bucket of milk and then picked up the scepter and then cast the spell? Oh my god, it's so boring! It just goes back and forth like that for 2 hours. It feels like you're in purgatory trapped with these 4 idiots desperately trying to get their lame story straight, with a prosecutor who's just fine. I swear to God, Barnum is maybe the most standard prosecutor in the entire series. He's not bad. He's not great either. I just don't care about him. I'm sorry. The case picks up a little bit when the 5th witness swoops in out of nowhere. I genuinely really like this guy. I think he's super funny. There's also some other funny moments, like Phoenix asking for a fingerprint analysis, only to realize that nobody knows what fingerprints are, or Leighton's iconic line, "It would seem that the concept of logic does not exist in this world." This case has some charming moments, but it's overall such a drab mystery, with not a lot of interesting possibilities in terms of how it occurred and where the contradictions lie. Until you start to figure out who did it, that is. I'm gonna be honest, I just assumed it was Amir since I figured he would follow the Ace Attorney trend of the culprit not being the first person you cross-examine. I figured delaying his arrival until halfway through the case meant that he was the witch. We can have male witches, why not?
Not witch, it's warlock!
But no, it's actually Kira, who's been here from the start. That genuinely took me off guard, and I really like the gradual reveal that one of the 4 idiots you've been grilling this whole time was the witch behind everything. She doesn't exactly have the best voice acting, but otherwise, she's pretty creepy, and I like taking her down. There are also some really clever aha moments towards the end here, like realizing that Amir hearing his name being called was actually Kira calling out the name of a similar sounding spell, or the revelation that the glasses she was desperately trying to find at the crime scene fell into the bucket of milk. It all comes together towards the end in a pretty satisfying way, with a pretty dark fate we see Kira put through. This case definitely sticks the landing, but man is it an absolute bore throughout the entire first half. Definitely not awful or even bad, but the very definition of a mixed bag.
My sister's
Dead.
Turnabout Sisters is a really good case until it isn't. I think the first investigation and trial days within this case are really good. Killing off Mia so suddenly is a genuine shock to the system, and you not only want to help her poor, sweet-looking sister get off the hook for this murder, but you also feel a special connection to it since you want to avenge your mentor. Compared to the subpar character introductions in the last case, this one does a great job of establishing major series players like Maya, Dick Gumshoe, and Miles Edgeworth, my king. He just keeps one-upping you with a new trick up his sleeve, and it is infuriating in the best possible way. April May is a very fun red herring villain to interrogate. She really sells the duplicitous, two-faced nature of a ton of Ace Attorney antagonists right from the get-go. And the bellhop is a pretty funny addition as well. It's also so fascinating seeing the charming, early installment weirdness afoot in this case. Like, Edgeworth tells Gumshoe he's looking forward to his next evaluation, but not like a salary evaluation like the running gag we see throughout the rest of the series. Plus, Maya just straight up calls you Phoenix in this case instead of Nick. That's kooky. Oh, and being able to accuse Marvin Grossberg of being Red White's lover is one of the funniest things in the whole game. Why don't more people talk about this moment? Yeah, this case is really good and engaging. Why is it ranked so low again?
What's your name?
Oh yeah, him. I'm gonna be honest, Red White is one of my least favorite culprits in the whole series, and easily one of the most disappointing ones based on his impact to the plot versus his actual capabilities. This dude killed Mia. He was involved in the public humiliation and discrediting of Mia and Maya's mother, and he basically has full control over the courts and police through his blackmail. And yet he's also a complete fucking idiot who I never felt threatened by once. Not only is his gimmick of using big, goofy words not all that interesting, but he shows up in court on the last day, completely goes against what his accomplice April testified happened, and overall has some of the easiest contradictions to point out, all of which get him hopelessly, embarrassingly flustered until Edgeworth can bail him out. It's pathetic. And I guess I could have lived with this on its own, but then with absolutely no build-up whatsoever, Maya suddenly gets the power to channel Mia, who just solves the case for Phoenix. She just tells him the answer. It doesn't even feel like this is his lowest moment, and this is the Hail Mary we've been praying for. It's just, we were doing pretty good at getting Red White on the ropes already, but then Mia just shows up completely out of the blue to tell us, hey, flip over this receipt. I didn't buy the glass thingy until a few nights ago. Then she reads off the names of Red White's blackmail victims, which just instantly gets him to fold and confess to the murder. What kind of master criminal is he anyway? This is a load of barnacles. I also find it so disappointing that Edgeworth doesn't even really react to the fact that he lost his first ever case. This should be a very big deal for him, but the game just forgets to show his reaction. This genuinely might be the most abrupt ending to any case in the series. And I'm not gonna lie, it kinda sours the whole thing for me. Obviously, as you can see, this isn't the worst second case ever, but it's gotta be the most underwhelming based on its significance to the series as a whole. Mia Fey's killer should have been a memorable and cunning antagonist. I don't think that's an impossible ask for a second case, because a lot of other second cases in the series do have cunning and memorable antagonists. Whatever, thanks for nothing, Mr. White. You should just stick to being a chemistry teacher. Clearly a life of crime isn't for you.
Oh no, you guys. Florent Labelle just released a new fragrance from prison, but he needs a way to promote it. If only there was a convenient website builder that he could... Okay, you know what's coming. Squarespace. Squarespace is a wonderful online website builder that enables you to create beautiful websites for your business or personal hobby. I adore how easy they make it to showcase your expertise and engage clients with video content on your website. You can make stunning video libraries and even monetize your content by adding a paywall. Perfect for online courses, exclusive tutorials, and premium workshops. If you want to get discovered fast, that's where integrated Squarespace SEO tools come in. Every website is optimized to be indexed with meta descriptions, an auto-generated sitemap, and more, letting you pop up more often on search engines and attract way more customers. Squarespace also offers lots of built-in donation tools. You can create a professional, on-brand website that makes it easy to accept one-time or recurring contributions, and engage your supporters. Use built-in email campaigns and marketing tools to connect with your community and inspire more people to support your cause. Check out squarespace.com/ShayFrillis for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use promo code ShayFrillis to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
I wanna ride in an airplane!
Turnabout Airlines is pretty good. And by the standards of Investigations 1, pretty good might as well be a fucking masterpiece. Sorry, I don't really like this game that much, but I genuinely don't have that much bad to say about this case. The setting is really novel, not only taking place on a plane, which you can't really do in a traditional Ace Attorney game, but taking place on a cool luxury plane, complete with an elevator and gift shop. Do these sort of planes actually exist in real life? Because I've never heard of anything like this before. Really cool shit. I also like Rhoda a lot. She's a pretty normal character by the standards of the series, but she's sweet. I love her little subplot about no one wanting to buy the ugly suitcases she designed, so she just pays $1,200 to buy one on each flight she takes. Literally, where does she get all that money? Oh well, the most important thing is that I actually care about defending her. They do a good job of making you believe that Edgeworth would want to defend her too, and they do a pretty solid job of obfuscating who the true culprit is. I mean, I can't be the only one who thought it was Zinc LeBlanc, considering what reason would a random passenger have to aggressively pin the blame on Edgeworth, unless he was covering his own tracks. Nope, turns out he just did it because he's an asshole. My next guess would have been the captain, but he ends up not even mattering to this case. The true culprit is the ever so sleepy baddie, Cammy Meal. And considering how she becomes your investigating partner while you're in the gift shop, I gotta admit, I kinda mentally ruled her out the first time I played this. As far as I can remember, this might be the only time you ever investigate a crime scene with the culprit. It's neat, and she makes for a decently fun final opponent. Overall, this is a pretty solid mystery with a cool setting and fun one-off characters. Well, okay, I'm not the biggest fan of Zinc LeBlanc, but he's fine as an annoying little red herring for this one case. I feel like he so easily had windy old bag Mike Meekin's potential of becoming a recurring face throughout the series, which would make me thoroughly despise him beyond all belief, like I do for those two. But they never brought him back, so he's fine. It is kind of a short and simple case, and the middle bit where you've already proved your innocence to everyone else, and yet you have to prove your innocence again to Franziska, is kind of annoying padding. But it could have been a lot worse. I should know, I played the other cases in this game. Overall though, this is a really good time that mostly comes out unaffected by a lot of this game's overall problems. Though this case also has a cameo from Sal Manella, and he makes a bunch of cringy, outdated gamer references, so maybe this is the worst case in the series actually. Oh, who am I kidding? I love shit like that.
God, I hate Shakespeare.
Not to give away my thoughts on the fourth case of the first Great Ace Attorney or anything, but oh my god, is the Memoirs of the Clouded Kokoro, the direct follow-up to that case, so much better in practically every way. It's a legitimately fun and intriguing mystery with characters I actually want to be around. Well, okay, Soseki is the defendant again, and as I alluded to in my ranking of every first case, I don't really like Soseki that much. He's just a lot, you know? Like, Herlock Sholmes is the perfect level of silliness. Not only because said silliness feels a little more restrained, but because he's also a cool and smart character on top of that. Soseki just kinda screams a lot and does these weird poses, and he's not really all that charming. Look, all I'm saying is, if I was a real-life historical figure, this is not how I would want to be depicted in a couple generations' time. If I'm being totally honest, having a repeat culprit that I already don't really care about that much harms the placement in this case just a tiny bit. Not by much though, because it's genuinely really good. They do something super unique and fun by upending the standard conventions of the series and actually having the culprit survive? That scene where he just stood up out of his seat made me mentally shit myself with fear. It's so cool to have someone be the victim of attempted murder for a change, and actually getting him on the stand to testify about his experience intimately wrestling with Soseki in order to determine whether Romeo or Juliet would win in a fight. Oh yeah, that reminds me. This man's name is William Shamspeare, and he talks in a bunch of Shakespeare quotes constantly. But he's also not like an in-universe replacement for Shakespeare. No. The real Shakespeare still exists. This Shamspeare guy just quotes him all the time and does all these goofy dances, and oh my god, he's a delight. I feel like he's the glue that really holds this case together. If he was just some random boring asshole, this whole story really wouldn't work as well. With that said, uncovering his pretty clever method of defrauding a gas company on the first day of court is legitimately cool and fun. I love how neatly it ties up the mystery of why there's so much soap in his apartment and why it looked like he was eating soap. And while I correctly assumed Shamspeare was the real culprit attempting to kill Soseki, I never would have guessed there was another attempted murder on top of that attempted murder, committed by Olive Green of all characters. Someone I really didn't care about much at all in her previous case, who ended up being the absolute best character in this one. Out of nowhere, I might add. The scene where you prevent her suicide is so damn unexpected and moving, and hearing why she did what she did is equally so. I love the fact that she didn't outright murder Shamsphere in cold blood, and instead laid a trap for him that would only kill him if he really was the one who killed her fiancé. She's easily one of the most sympathetic culprits to date in the entire series, while also having one of the rawest lines in It's Not to Be. That is the answer. You deserve to die for what you've done. Like, holy shit, dude! Overall, this is a very good case with an extremely satisfying ending. Though there are a couple things that prevent me from calling it great. Despite how unique it is, it's still a rather simplistic plot, with Shamsphere having a rather underwhelming and unnecessary motive to kill. How hard would it be to just look for the treasure when the occupant of the room isn't in there, dude? I wouldn't mind that so much if they just played up what a complete whack job he is, which I guess they kinda do with his whole general demeanor, but I don't know. I was waiting for that whole killer dropping the facade moment we've become so accustomed to with Ace Attorney villains, but it just never really comes with him, shockingly. We get a few moments where he breaks character and stops talking in Shakespeare language, but then he just goes right back to it, right up until the end. I don't know, I kinda wanted more out of him. I also think the gas stealing plotline does go on a bit too long and take up a bit too much time, and considering how heavily this case ties back to the first game's fourth case, it essentially makes this case feel like a lost episode from the first game, and kinda makes you wonder, okay, why are we doing this now? What is this second game even about? Ultimately, however, these are pretty minor issues. This case is very good and fun, and I like it. Shall I compare it to a summer's day or something? I can't think of any other Shakespeare quotes right now, sorry.
I opened the passenger door and wiggled my way out of there.
Did you just dab?
Reunion and Turnabout is a very good case. Not one of the all-time best, but a real breath of fresh air compared to what it's sandwiched between in Justice for All. What a weird game that was. Maya finds herself in the defendant's chair for the second case in a row. This time accused of channeling a spirit that ended up murdering a doctor. I actually really like the moral ambiguity here. Like, for a while, I thought the spirit she channeled really did do it, and we had to prove that Maya herself shouldn't be held liable for the actions of someone she channels. It feels like a pretty insurmountable challenge to prove her innocence, especially with the photographic evidence we received courtesy of Lada. I feel like she's a pretty divisive character, and while I can understand why she has haters, all I can say is, that couldn't be me. I've genuinely loved Lada from day one, ever since I first met her in the first game. She's just so damn funny. And while she can be a bit of a hindrance sometimes, I feel like she does have a heart of gold, as evidenced in this case when she goes through an arc and feels legit remorse over helping the prosecution take down Maya. Speaking of the prosecution, this is our intro to Franziska von Karma, a pretty good prosecutor who isn't one of my personal favorites, but that's mainly just because of her intense competition. Nah, she's good, and this is a solid first case in terms of introducing her as your new rival, since Edgeworth is apparently dead. Phoenix's extreme gay angst over this fact is pretty funny, not gonna lie. Back to the new characters, however. I feel like this case does a stellar job of introducing Pearl Fay. She's easily one of my favorite characters in all of Ace Attorney. Simply adorable in how sheltered and precocious she is. I really like how a major factor in the outcome of this case is the fact that she was playing with a ball and she accidentally broke a sacred urn that housed the spirit of the founder of the Querine channeling technique. Very fitting thing for a little kid to do. The actual mystery is pretty strong as well, revealing that Pearl's mother Morgan was trying to dispose of Maya so Pearl could take over the village, and teaming up with the disgraced nurse Eenie Meenie, who could conveniently get revenge on the doctor she worked for at the same time. I think it's pretty cool how this case essentially has two culprits, especially since Morgan and Eenie are kinda the only two people who could have done it. So even if you suss one of them out, it's highly unlikely that you'll figure out right away that they were in cahoots. The main problem with this, though, is that despite the excellent confrontation against Eenie in the final day of court, we never actually get to take down Morgan. She's just arrested off screen, which is kinda lame. For such an evil, venomous character, she's shoved to the background in both of the cases she plays a role in, which is especially egregious here because there's a lot less going on than there is in the other case she's in. Even so, the Eenie stuff is pretty exciting, and her story is genuinely pretty sad and horrific. Apart from that, it's pretty cool how this is the first case to really revolve around spirit channeling as a potential means for murder. We get much more interesting cases of it in Trials and Tribulations and Spirit of Justice, but this is a pretty good way to lay the groundwork for those cases. It's very good. Definitely not outstanding. I mean, the murder plot does end up being pretty simple when you get get down to it. And I definitely think there's a bit of an over-reliance on Mia here that I would have hoped they would have gotten out of their system during the first game. Mia's a great character, but it kind of annoys me how much she needs to be channeled in order to bail Phoenix out of various situations. But overall, a pretty good case, with important implications for later on. It's honestly wild how they tease a direct follow-up to this case at the end, but then they just don't have that follow-up until the final case of the next game. I can't be the only one who played Justice for All for the first time and assumed Morgan would come back in the final case, right? I don't know, like I said, Justice for All is weird, but that's not this case's fault. It's some solid stuff. Shout out to Dick Gumshoe trying to keep Pearl amused by showing her his gun. That's always funny.
I am an ace detective. A celebrity!
The stolen turnabout is goated for so many reasons, but most of them are Luke at me. Oh my god, this guy is such an amazing character. I can never get enough of his pompous attitude, incredible design, and insanely goofy antics. Here I am, the tragic clown! I swear to god, I'm so obsessed with him. I mean, who even thinks of this? Pinning yourself for a theft case in order to have an alibi for the murder you just committed. His plan is so insane and elaborate without being too over the top and complicated. Just, oh man, what a phenomenal culprit. I also like how it's not immediately obvious that it's him, solely because he seems like he would be too obvious. Like, he's the most suspicious looking man who ever walked the face of the earth. So surely we can rule him out. I even feel like if you didn't know how this game goes, they do a pretty solid job at the beginning of suggesting that maybe, just maybe, he's gonna take over Gumshoe's role as the main detective for the rest of the game. Considering how Gumshoe briefly appears and then kind of dips for that first investigation segment, as Luke at me takes center stage. That doesn't last long, of course, but hey, the great ace detective almost got off scot-free in my mind, and that's worth something. I promise there are other reasons this case is really great. One of my favorite elements of it is how nicely it calls back to Justice for All's second case. You know, the one we just talked about like a minute ago. Following up on the vase of Ami Faye and having it get fully repaired by the returning Adrian Andrews. So nice to see her again. This case calls back to Reunion and Turnabout in a very natural way, while also subtly priming you for elements that are gonna come into play in the game's finale. Like, when Maya talks about Kurine Village and what Morgan Faye did to her, it all feels very natural, and it's great to reestablish all this before Bridge to the Turnabout picks all these threads back up. Speaking of which, much like every second case, this one has the job of introducing the new prosecutor, Godot. And boy does he make a great impression. That intriguing, mysterious hook of who he is, what the whole mask thing is about, and why he's so aggressively anti-Phoenix. Oh man, is it all laid out so beautifully, while also perfectly positioning him as an intimidating force to go up against in court. I also really like the little reaction he has upon seeing spirit-channeled Mia for the first time. But the true heart of this case is the incredibly sweet couple Ron and Desiree Delight. I love seeing how far this goofy little thief boy and his baddie wife will go for each other. I like how she actually helps out by finding the vase, and the bits where he trails off and gets ignored are pretty funny without ever getting old. It's just nice to have a case where every character in it, both new and old, is an absolute winner. I mean, we even get to meet the crucial and iconic character, the judge's brother. Now that's what I'm talking about. Oh, you know what? I take back my winner comment. I forgot Larry's in this one. I'm not the biggest Larry fan, guys. I don't know how to break it to you. Overall, a fantastic case, though not quite one of the all-time best. Despite Luke Atmey's brilliant plan to secure an alibi, the murder itself is pretty simple, and the locations you have to investigate are equally standard for this series. Progression can also be a little difficult to figure out at times. Like, how am I supposed to know that you have to present Kane Bullard's profile to Gumshoe in order to move the story along? Come on now. But none of these are huge issues. This is an awesome case overall. And I'm not just saying that because I correctly guessed which of Luke Atmey's statements I needed to press on my first try in his final testimony. Figuring that out might be the most proud moment of my entire Ace Attorney career, in all honesty.
You're going to prison.
The Captive Turnabout is a case that I am shocked does not get more love and attention. I've consistently seen people rank it as not a bad case, but the closest thing that Investigations 2 has to a subpar case. And that's insane to me, because to this day, it is one of my favorites, not only in the game, but in the entire series. With that said, it does have a definite big problem that absolutely prevents it from ranking at the very top of the second case list for me. But damn it, I love it anyway. way. I kind of don't even know where to start. Right off the bat, the fact that you're investigating the murder of Bronco Knight, the culprit of the last case, is insane. It's the first real indication that this isn't gonna be like other Ace Attorney games. Nothing is a standalone incident in this story. Every case is connected through multiple characters. What an amazing hook right out of the gate. And on top of that, the setting is outstanding. You wouldn't think a prison would be that interesting to explore, but by God, this place is wacky. The fact that every prisoner is given an animal companion who all have free access throughout the entire prison while the prisoners don't. The fact that the circus regularly comes to perform here. The fact that you get to see Frank Saw It of all people again and interrogate him as a witness. He's honestly way more fun here than he was in his original appearance in the first game. And then there's the new characters. Rocco Carceretto as the fun, plucky boxer whose prison escape just so happens to get mixed up in the murder plot. Fifi Lagarde, who's a pretty decent culprit that I saw coming a mile away, just based off of Ace Attorney conventions of introducing a character and not doing a whole lot with them initially. But hey, she's fun and her motivation is so cool. Killing Knight out of fear that he's working for the top dog prisoner she can't stand. Bodhidharma Canis. Words cannot express how much I love this guy. I'm genuinely shocked there aren't more people talking about him. He is the rawest damn character Ace Attorney has ever put out. This blind assassin with a chilling theme, creepy design, murder dog, the works. I just love doing this weird, off-putting voice for him every time I read his dialogue. Yes, Helmut. Yes, we are going to beat Milosz Edgeworth to death. I love how the assumption is that him and his murder dog did the deed, before we find out it was all orchestrated by Lagarde as a way of getting him transferred out of her perfect paradise prison. Such a unique motivation. It's an absolute blast to uncover. And really, any time spent with Canis is just dripping with atmosphere and malice. Is it any wonder why I always look forward to this case? The Captive Turnabout also has the privilege of introducing brand new major characters to this game, like Eddie Fender, Verity Gavel, and Eustace Winter. This segment is already long enough, so I'm not going to get too into them, but suffice to say, 2 out of 3 of these characters are flawlessly introduced. We'll get to Verity. First, I have to give special mention to the fact that Eustace's first ever testimony is so wrong that pressing every single one of his statements will get them to change. Now that's how you use Ace Attorney mechanics to establish a character's whole deal. Just brilliant. I also adore this case from a character perspective for Edgeworth, since it's a rare glimpse of him doing some honest-to-goodness defense attorney work after he's removed as prosecutor. I really like seeing him struggle with his newfound temporary role. I mean, Verity really clocks his tea when she points out that he didn't even bother to find out that Simeon was in the circus. Oh yeah, I forgot about Simeon. Yep, I mean, he's there. There's not really a whole lot to say about this character. He's just a fine motivation for Edgeworth to want to help a helpless person for a change, and begin his arc of wanting to try to live up to his father's ideals for a change. I feel like this was the first case in the investigation's duology that actually had interesting things to say about Edgeworth as a protagonist. Things that perfectly carry over into the third case of the game. There are just so many other great things I could mention, like the fact that this case redeems the concept of the circus and brings both it and Regina back without including a bunch of pedophiles this time. Or how about the fact that I'm pretty sure this is the only time in the series where you get to play as Dick Gumshoe during this one part where you're using the metal detector in the yard. It's everything I could have ever possibly dreamed of and more. Okay, genuinely, this case seems to have it all. An interesting setting, awesome characters, Edgeworth telling an elephant to cease and desist hitting K, and more funny Eustace Winter moments than even I, the biggest Eustace Winter fan I know, could handle. What could possibly be wrong with this case? Yeah, it's too long. I mean, I love it, and I was tempted to say you can't have too much of a good thing at first. But yeah, there is in fact a lot of fat you can and should trim. Like, Rocco Carcereto's entire character honestly didn't need to be there, as much as I like him. You could have just made the polar bear Frank saw its animal buddy and cut out this entire subplot about Rocco escaping. It's ultimately little more than a red herring when you already have the perfect red herring in Canis. I'll admit that Carcereto's involvement did briefly make me doubt my Fifi Lagarde theory the first time I played the game, but I don't know if it was worth how much time it takes up. On top of a video investigation, a lengthy Little Thief segment on the last day, and having to conduct this investigation while constantly getting railroaded by Verity at every turn. Eustace is a funny nuisance, and putting him in his place adds a bit of levity, but Verity felt a little too overused and obstinate for such a smart character. By the time she concocted a new crackpot theory about how Simeon committed the murder in his 15 minutes of offstage time during the circus performance, I couldn't even follow it, and I honestly didn't even feel like it was necessary to. It was like talking to a brick wall, and not a hilarious brick wall like Eustace. Verity gets better as the game goes on, but I'd argue this was a bit of a meandering first impression. And that's the thing about this case as a whole. Much as I adore so much of it, it just meanders and goes off track just a little too much for me to really say it's one of Ace Attorney's finest cases. One of my favorites, sure, but not one of the finest. If it just contained the roughly 75 to 80% of what's in the game currently that it actually needed, then I would unquestionably call it an S tier case. I don't think it's missing anything, I just think it needs some stuff taken away. With that said, it does have Eustace Winter in it, so that makes it an objectively perfect case. Sorry, I don't make the rules. Yeah, I didn't really have to overthink this. The best second case in the series is pretty easily the magical turnabout from Spirit of Justice. As much as I love the stolen turnabout and the captive turnabout, I can't really say either one of them are among some of the all-timer best cases in the series. But this one, I mean, it might just be up there. It kind of has everything going for it. I have very mixed thoughts on Spirit of Justice as a whole, and a large part of that comes from the fact that it is by far the Ace Attorney game with the weirdest structure. There's this dramatic, revolutionary story being told in this foreign kingdom, but we only see it unfold in every other case, since we also gotta have Apollo and Athena stuff to do back home. It can make for some awkward tonal whiplash, but to be totally fair, I think that only really comes into play with the game's fourth case. The magical turnabout makes a great argument for why this format could potentially work, offering an immensely cool and engaging mystery that makes use of the fact that Phoenix is away, letting Apollo and Athena tackle a very high-stakes case all by themselves, and perhaps most brilliantly of all, centering the whole thing around Trucy. Honestly, I did the math, and I think she might be my favorite female character in the entire series. Every bit as plucky and quirky as Maya, but with an air of tremendous capability and showmanship. The magical flair that she brings to the series cannot be overstated. And after she was so rudely sidelined in Dual Destinies, it was so nice of this case to remind us that, yes, she is in fact a major character in this trilogy. You also gotta give her credit. She lasted a really long time after her introduction without getting accused of murder. I mean, Maya and Athena get accused of it in the same game they're introduced. Anyway, I'm genuinely shocked it took them this long to do a murder mystery that revolves around a live event. One of Trucy's magic shows, in fact. It allows for such a cool and creative setting for you to investigate. One that really tickles my theater-loving brain. I was kind of predestined to adore this case, considering it involves one of my favorite characters in one of my favorite settings. But the good news is, the writing here is also top-notch. Bonnie and Betty are unbelievably fun characters with a great double act going on. But the star of the show here, with one of the pettiest motivations, craziest backstories, and most undeniable levels of aura, is Tony Stark himself, Roger Rettens. Slowly figuring out that this sleazy TV producer is a disgraced former member of Troop Gramarye is genuinely mind-blowing. I feel like the 3DS games had a tendency to overuse and somewhat cheapen the whole culprit revealing their true self gimmick, with it not always being warranted to the extent that they take it. But here, it's incredibly natural from a story perspective, which makes it all the more chilling when Roger reverts into arsonist magician mode. Just the fact that he held this grudge against Trucy's family for 13 years, and went to all this trouble to create one of the most unexpectedly elaborate murder plots in the whole series. I mean, it's just insane, it really is. Who would even think of creating a remote murder system like this? And as if all of that wasn't enough, he also significantly raises the stakes on you by tricking Trucy into signing a contract that forces her to owe $3 million if she doesn't perform the show. He then repossesses everything the right agency owns, dramatically upping the stakes, since if you don't prove Trucy innocent in one day, your entire law office will be seized and shut down. It's a truly immense high-stakes mess for you to get into in just the second case of the game. And the entire time, this smug asshole is filming and mocking you. Oh man, I want to say he's so hateable, but God, I just can't help but love him. What a phenomenal culprit with a great identity twist, chilling true persona, and equally chilling breakdown. You also have so much variety in the gameplay here, from dusting a coffin for fingerprints, perceiving, doing the mood matrix, and intuitively analyzing not one, but 2 different videos. Hell, Trucy gives one of the most unique testimonies in the whole series, where she demonstrates a magic trick for the court right before your eyes. It's honestly pretty challenging to pick out the contradiction here, but in a really good way. Maybe the first day of investigation is a little long in the tooth, but otherwise, this case is always engaging and never gets old. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention what really makes this case so special. The prosecutor. That was a lie. I'm lying. Neuwirth is one of the worst characters in all of Ace Attorney, but he's tolerable here. He thankfully doesn't really drag the case down too much. I like when he says, "What's crack-a-lackin', homie?" No. The real element of the case I find super special is how much insight we get into Trucy as a character that even the Apollo Justice game didn't fully provide. This is Trucy at her lowest point, desperately trying to convince everyone around her that she's fine by maintaining her bubbly, showman-like demeanor. But ultimately, despite how capable she presents herself, she's a horribly frightened and traumatized teenage girl. Helping her find her inner strength and defending her against a truly evil and vengeful man who she never did anything wrong to makes this one of the easiest cases to get emotionally invested in. It's a wonderful coda to the events of Apollo Justice that involve the Grammarly family. It's a great showcase for the resolve of Trucy and Apollo. It's got a tremendously fun setting. Every single character is great except Neuwirth. It is undoubtedly my pick for the greatest second case in any Ace Attorney game. Woo! Well, that's all the second cases. See you guys next time for the third case ranking. Oh boy, nothing but bangers in that set. Oh man, am I beyond excited. It's gonna be such a great time. Good night, Japanifornia.